Good morning. My name is Serene Teffaha. I'm a solicitor and I am the principal solicitor of Advocate Me, my law firm. I'm making this video with quite a heavy heart. The reason why I'm making this video is because I'm declaring myself a whistleblower and I'm seeking protection for myself and for my most vulnerable clients, specifically 2 clients, and I will come back to that later throughout my video. We are seeking to be protected from the violations of the Crown, acting in Australia against our livelihoods, our safety, and our financial integrity. Mr. Scott Morrison, Prime Minister of Australia, has stated recently that it is a triumph of democracy that thousands of women could rally outside of Parliament House for the March 4th justice protest. He said the following words: "Not far from here, such marches even now are being met with bullets, but not here in this country." According to Mr. Morrison, in this country, there's allegedly the rule of law. Mr. Morrison, in this country, there's in fact state-sanctioned violence by the Crown, and it's far more worse and far more perverted than metallic bullets on the streets. In this country, the bullets of perversion of the rule of law are deeply psychological and abusive, and they are used against its citizens to inculcate a sense of complete fear. And unfortunately, in my practice, I have seen this fear lead to men, women, and children taking their own lives, Mr. Morrison. You will have to bear with me as it is quite an emotional moment for me. This is not just about parliamentarians masturbating at work desks and private orgy parties in our Parliament House offices. This is about an entire nation of parliamentarians, bureaucrats, and judges, and their litany of hired thugs, including police officers, psychiatrists, other experts, and government regulators who administrate the agenda of pedophile protection and perpetrator protection. I qualify my statement to say that, of course, I'm not referring to all parliamentarians, to all judges or bureaucrats, not even to all police officers and other government regulators. But we have reached a point in our society where silence is consent. And the silence of the judges, the bureaucrats, the parliamentarians, the police officers, and all other government regulators and bureaucrats that work in our system, their silence cannot be tolerated anymore. The corruption and the serious maladministration is all pervasive. In my law firm, I have been working tirelessly with highly vulnerable people and members of our community, and I'm so proud to say that I've worked on many cases on a pro bono basis or on a no-win, no-fee basis. I have helped and continue to work with women, children, and men exposed and confronted by serious issues of child sexual abuse, family violence, and all other forms of violence. I have worked tirelessly with many whistleblowers, assisting them in negotiating deals and negotiating their own sanity. I'm currently representing police officers and health practitioners who've blown the whistle in regards to the management of the pandemic by our governments. I'm also representing thousands of people across a number of class actions that we have been diligently organising in my firm over the course of the past 9 months. The first the first action is the action representing the residents and the visitors of the public housing towers. I'm so proud to say that we have now filed these in the Supreme Court as one of the first class actions that targets and responds to some of the issues that we've been confronted during our pandemic response. We filed this successfully on the 19th of March 2021. We're also working on the national class action with over 5,000 participants challenging the government's responses to the pandemic on questions of failed legislative processes and procedures, including forced detention, forced testing, forced vaccination, forced masking, and forced restrictive behaviours. We are very close to also filing the national class action. And very importantly, I have been working on another major case, another major class action. And that class action is very dear to my heart because it is about dealing and confronting issues of family violence and child abuse, including child sexual abuse, and the way that those issues are handled by our courts. That class action will be targeted against the family court judges. And I have gone on the record on many occasions talking about the corruption and the serious maladministration of these judges. This has not been borne out of a vacuous claim. This is borne out of thousands and thousands of people who have been brutalised by the Family Court of Australia. The government knows that I am organising in that context 3 different strategies. The first strategy is the High Court challenge that would look at the Family Law Act and look at the legal questions that are coming out of the Family Law Act around parental responsibility and whether that can be easily divested as it is done every day by these judges in the court. They wheel and deal with parental responsibility and take away a parent's rights to care and love for their child on hearsay evidence. So we will be raising constitutional questions as part of that case. Furthermore, we will be doing a People's Commission, where I will be inviting all the members of the public to provide me direct evidence of the serious maladministration and corruption of these judges. We've already gathered a lot of evidence, and they know I have this evidence. And for this reason, we are spearheading the People's Commission. And for this reason, we're also doing a Section 72 constitutional complaint against the judges' behaviours and the things they do. Ex parte hearings, taking away children with no real evidence against a loving parent, taking away a child because the mother is a vegan or an anti-vaxxer according to the judge, or taking away a child because she doesn't like how the father looks, or putting, as Judge Vesta has done recently, a man who just could not supply the financial information that was requested in jail. These are some of the things we will be meticulously looking at. Now, the government knows I'm doing all of this, and they know I have been vocal, and they know I have been mobilising people for all my actions. They know that my legal arguments are powerful, and they understand how clever I am. This is not the first time I have confronted government in my lifetime. So they know and they understand that I understand the law particularly well. And I have not shied away from putting the legal arguments out for the public so the public can use these legal arguments, and they know that I have been successful in negotiating a lot of successful outcomes for my clients, and they know that the national class action and the detention towers and the family court challenge will probably be successful. And they understand. So what has the Victorian Legal Services Board, the government regulators, done? They have now, as soon as I had filed on the 19th of March my Detention Towers class action, the Victorian Legal Services Board issues me a letter. And they threaten to cancel my license on the same day as I file the Detention Towers class action. Instead of playing the issues and allowing me to vent and ventilate the issues on behalf of my clients in the courtroom, they want to take it outside of the courtroom and they want to ambush my firm and my practice. Now, they do this in the absence of not one complaint by any of my clients. By the thousands of clients I represent, the Victorian Legal Services Board has zero. What are they acting on, do you say, or do you ask? And I will explain. The Victorian Legal Services Board has accused me of three things. They say that I'm not obeying and upholding the law, and I will come back to that shortly. They claim that that I have not been true to my duties to the court and to the administration of justice. I will come back to that shortly. And I have failed my clients, even though they have no complaints from my clients. Let's talk about government regulation. In a society where government states that they are the keepers of truth, so in allegedly a democratic society, you have the separation of powers between the legislator, which I refer to as parliamentarians, the executive, or the bureaucracies that are built around the parliament, ATO, ACCC, the government departments, the DHS, all of that. They're the bureaucracy. That's what we refer to as the bureaucracy, the executive. And finally, the judiciary as separation of powers. And they're meant to really check on each other to ensure that there's some sort of regulation. Now, in such an environment, you have the government presenting itself as somehow being the keeper of truth, as being the keeper of perspective, as being somehow, the keeper of people and people's thoughts. So what ends up happening is the intellectuals in the society, and I'm not saying that doctors and lawyers are intellectuals by any measure, but the theory is that the intellectuals of society, instead of being free to engage in their professions and question and ask questions of the bureaucracy, of the judiciary, and of the executive should they fail, the intellectuals become owned by government. And how do they become owned by government? The executive sets up government regulators. The farce is that the government regulators are there to help the justice, to ensure that the fairness is there. But what has occurred in a country where corrupt individuals have usurped positions of power is that, in fact, government opinion becomes dogma and it's presented as the old truth. So therefore, if they say this is science, therefore it is science. So this is exactly what Copernicus and Galileo and all the others, allegedly questioned, and in an alleged democracy where governments are the keepers of truth, if the government officials become corrupted, then the regulators start to attack and threaten the intellectuals who do not conform to government opinion and government dogma. And that occurs in all fields. specifically in the fields of medicine, as we are seeing now with AHPRA being the regulators of health practitioners, and Victorian Legal Services Board and the various other state boards and commissions that regulate the lawyers. And that is why in this country the lawyers have been silenced and muted. They've been muted to speak the truth because they're afraid. They're afraid. And same with the doctors and the nurses. Although more are coming out now, they have been muted to speak the truth about the science. So the law and science becomes usurped by government. And what ends up happening is government feels that they can do and pull a stunt like they've pulled on me. I am representing members of the public who are speaking up against the government, who do not like what the government is doing, who do not like what the government regulators are doing. And what does the government do? Issue me, the lawyer who is standing up, as being regulated by government. Now, I have been audited by the Victorian Legal Services Board for my trust accounting, and I've come up clean because I have not touched that. And I knew that they were coming. So I understand that I have been complying and doing all that I can to ensure that the very government we're having task with and want to go to the courts to ventilate these issues under, I'm ensuring that we comply with everything that government still wants. And yet, despite my entire compliance, despite complying with everything, I'm still a naughty girl. I'm a bad girl. I'm a very, very bad girl because I have not been playing within the rules of the legal fraternity. So what does the government do? They state sanction violence against me. And they don't just threaten me. They threaten all my clients. That's right. They're saying that they care for my clients who haven't complained because I am such a mad person. I'm so mad that I know the law so well that they're going to have to intervene. Government is going to have to intervene and take over government action. So they're going to try to educate my clients too about how bad my clients are. If this is not insanity, I don't know what is. Clinical insanity cannot even describe what I feel about these people pinning this stuff to paper. Let's talk about what the Victorian Legal Services Board is alleging I have done. The only 2 complaints that they have received against me, surprise, surprise, are from judges. That's right. I represent hundreds of people. And in my representation, I go before the court many times. So in terms of percentage-wise of when I turn up to the courts, I have a great rapport with most of the judges. In fact, the federal court judges, the Supreme Court judges, many of the Fair Work, where I have represented a lot of my clients, I have a very good reputation, and I have gone many, many times, and I even have myself on the record many times. But in the Family Court of Australia and in the Magistrates Court, I've had to pull some judges up on their maladministration and corruption. That's right. And when I have used my voice for the most heinous crimes committed against my clients by the establishment, by the judiciary, I am now targeted for that. And what am I targeted for particularly? Cases that involve serious child abuse, sexual disclosures, and family violence. That's right. I'm speaking out and speaking up for many disenfranchised and vulnerable people who've been attacked falsely by our government bureaucracies. And I'm talking here about some seriously nefarious agencies. The first case is a case that's dear to my heart. It is a case that has been brought by the Crown against a group of people And one of them is a grandmother I am representing. That grandmother has zero criminal history. She's a true blue Queenslander at heart and loves her family and children to the core. If you line her up in a lineup of grandmas, you will always choose her. Always choose her. She comes supporting you everywhere you go, and she will always, always have your back. That's the kind of grandma we're talking about. Now, this grandma, with her grandson, who she was the primary carer for, she had full parental responsibility for, as a result of a series of unfortunate events with the father and mother. The mother is her daughter, with drug abuse and whatnot. She was given full parental responsibility. As the child grew up, father had access to him. He came back to his grandmother and disclosed very serious issues of violence, of drug abuse, witnessing drug abuse, and serious disclosures of child sexual abuse. This grandmother, caring so much for her child, for her grandson, she took the child, and rightly, to the Child Protection Unit in Queensland, Townsville. The child, through video disclosures that were recorded, made very serious disclosures that most certainly needed to be investigated and most certainly raised very troubling issues. Initially, the Queensland police were willing to extend their help and support, but unfortunately it got escalated to the senior sergeant there. And from that time, my client, the grandmother's life has been hell. All hell has been unleashed on her by the state. Who? The Queensland Police, the Family Court of Australia, the Commonwealth Director of Public Prosecutions, and the Australian Federal Police. They all unleashed hell on this woman. She is just a grandmother who wanted to care for her child, for her grandson. When she realised she was being attacked by the senior sergeant who started to rile up the family court against her, she needed to protect the child. And so she took him away to protect him. Then the Australian Federal Police, after the Queensland Police caught her, the Australian Federal Police issued child stealing charges against her and put her in an ankle bracelet for 2.5 years until she reached out for my help. When I looked at the case, I was horrified. I could not believe this is the most violent case I have seen of state-sanctioned violence against an innocent woman. Is this what the Australian Federal Police? Is this what the CDPP? Is this what the Queensland Police and our judiciary has come to? Targeting innocent grandmothers because they're blowing the whistle on child abuse and sexual abuse? What's happening in this case that is drawing this? Who's involved with what exactly? You'd have to ask some serious questions to try and understand the driving grounds for why such agencies as big as the AFB, as big as the CDPP, as big as the magistrates' courts, as big as the Queensland Police, and as big as the Attorney General, who we escalated these to with no response or help for this poor grandmother. When she approached me last year, I wanted to defend her. I wanted to do my best, and when I looked at the prosecution case, I was horrified to see that they later changed the charge because they knew they had no chance with the child stealing to a conspiracy to defeat justice. We know you wage that kind of obscure charge when the person that you're charging is completely innocent. And there's a lot of case law that says that when the government uses a conspiracy to defeat justice charge, it's usually very contrived. And indeed, these big bodies, these huge bodies, these dangerous bodies, AFB is dangerous organisation coming after a grandmother like this when there are so many pedophiles around, and yet they come after a grandma and call her the ringleader of a child stealing network when she's just protecting her grandson. Now, before the court, I argued it very well. The prosecution's brief was talking about agreements of abduction. Apparently the people who helped her, this grandma, had an agreement to abduct her own grandchild. Of course, under the law, this is an entirely questionable task. Questionable, absolutely questionable charges. So I prepared a very comprehensive private submissions for the consideration of the magistrate, Deputy Chief Magistrate Gitt of the Queensland Magistrates Court, Brisbane Division. It was private submissions where I detailed and I broke down all of the laws. And they know that I'm extremely clever, and what I broke down was extremely logical. You can't accuse a grandmother of abducting her own grandchild. The elements cannot be proven against her on that level. Furthermore, there's most certainly competing interests here. The grandmother's sole intention here, the intent, is the protection of her grandchild. How can you be taking a huge case like this and putting her in an ankle bracelet for 2.5 years? Her body is failing her. I pleaded with the magistrate to take off the ankle bracelet. He was embarrassed, and he did it out of embarrassment. And then, the first time round, he wasn't ready, allegedly, to give the decision. And then in February this year, after some good coaching, I'm sure, he gave a decision to commit her and the other defendants to trial. A really sad moment in history. And he articulated his decision in an open transcript. And the most worrying part is when he said this: when careful regard is had to the available evidence, any inference to be drawn as to whether or not Ms. Greer's only intention was the protection and safety of the child — I won't mention his name, but he's unfortunately mentioned his name in public and put it on public record when he shouldn't have — is quite simply a matter for a jury to return. No discrediting of the evidences led by the prosecution to support the requisite intention had materially occurred. Oh, I just referred to the child abuse disclosures. Apparently that's not good enough, because the child's voice is mute, silenced, not heard. And as such, a competing inference of the prosecution is available. Abduction or protection? Really unsure what the grandmother intended. Did she want to abduct her grandchild, or did she want to actually protect him? Rightio. So he put that in the public record, and furthermore, he then sought to intimidate me as her solicitor in an ongoing matter. Now, perversion in the course of justice. Why would you attack a solicitor of a woman that you know has got no money to defend herself? The only solicitor who's doing it for free because no other solicitor wants to touch it. And you, as the magistrate, as the deputy chief magistrate, attacking the solicitor for private submissions he made. So then he continues, and he puts the child's name into the record again. And he puts my private submissions into the record. I didn't make them public. He did. Again, he cites the name of the child has been let down by the system. Ms. Teffaha, I'm going to pull you up. The child has been let down by the system, by the judiciary, by the police, and by those people who are meant to protect him. This is what I wrote in my private submissions. He's now in the full care of his father, and I will not name the father's name, despite the full knowledge by judges, the police, the Australian Federal Police, and the Commonwealth DPP of his serious disclosures about his father. If this court will continue to mute the voice of this innocent child, the court will effectively be an enabler of this disclosed abuse. The court must immediately discharge and or dismiss all charges brought against the defendant grandmother, including all other defendants that have been accused of being complicit in a crime they never intended, and the child must be immediately returned home to his defendant grandmother. This is extremely heartbreaking for me. This is about a child who didn't just make disclosures to the police. He also made comprehensive disclosures to a child sexual abuse expert, writer, and reporter in a very comprehensive document that is also before the court's prosecution material. In our system, children are muted. They don't have a voice. That's what happens in the family court every day. That's what happens in our courts every day. Children are muted and they're not believed, as are any women, as in any woman or man who are actually screaming out for protection for being violated against. Don't get me wrong, there are false people who make false allegations, but when the child is directly making these allegations, and when it's the child's disclosures we're talking about, we need to believe them. He then turned around to me, the magistrate, and accused me, after he put the child's name in public record, the father's name in the public record, he put my submissions in private in the public record. I never did that. He did. And then he accused me of diminishing public confidence in the administration of justice. That's right. I'm diminishing public confidence in the administration of justice, not the judges, not the Family Court of Australia, not the Australian Federal Police, not the police, not the parliamentarians, not the Attorney General, but me. I, Serene Teffaha, apparently is diminishing the public confidence in the administration of justice. We all know that this allegation is brought when usually they're embarrassed by how powerful your arguments are, by how clear my arguments are, and by how fair my arguments are. He asked me whether I wanted a lawyer, and when I came to actually express that I did want a lawyer, he cut me off. And I said to him, I'm being truthful. I said, Your Honour, if you feel that this is the way to deal with those submissions, I'll most certainly respond to them. I would need to consider, obviously, my position. I do put on the record, Your Honour, that I have fundamental duty as an officer of the court to be truthful, and I will continue to be truthful. That's what made me a very successful lawyer to date. I've never had any complaint placed against me. I've had a number of threats in the past when I've been extremely honest, brutally honest, in fact, Your Honour. When I've been brought into this case and I saw the prosecutor for the CDPP had some very serious documents of disclosure by the child, and he interrupted me. I'm asking you if you want to be heard. Yes, Your Honour, I do want to be heard, but you just cut me off. And whether I should refer you to the Legal Services Commission for those submissions that I just read into the record. So he admits that he just read them into the record. It's too much. Oh, it's too much. It's too much. Corruption is too much. And then he goes on, interrupts me, and then when I ask for wanting to ask for a lawyer, he just interrupts and then rudely leaves the courtroom. And apparently this is the silver bullet. The Victorian Legal Services Board is relying on this interchange, this exchange between me and this judge, who is accusing my client of perversion in the course of justice. And yet, what is a bigger perversion in the course of justice than trying to intimidate your solicitor? Trying to take away her license, not just in practicing in Queensland, but all over the world, all over Australia. Not the world, all over Australia. She's too good, too smart, too real, too truthful. She can't be part of the legal fraternity, according to Deputy Chief Magistrate Getz. And then the Victorian Legal Services Board, he just throws around the private submissions in the name of this child. Queensland Legal Services Commissioner has the material. Victorian Legal Services Commissioner has this material. And they just throw this material out. Oh, we got you here, Miss Teffaha. You're too truthful. We got you here. Oh. And the Victorian Legal Services Board. Just shocking stuff, to be honest. The Victorian Legal Services Board goes a step further. At least the judge didn't call me a liar, but according to the Victorian Legal Services Board, they're my own personal submissions. They're not the submissions on behalf of my client. All of a sudden, they're my own. It's me, Miss Teffaha. She's the one who's allegedly being prosecuted. What the hell? So they then go a step further and not just state to me that I'm diminishing public confidence in the administration of justice. They say I have no proper basis to have put those private submissions. There's no factual material was cited in support or in circumstances where the material was cited did not provide a basis for the fact alleged. Wow. So the Victorian Legal Services Board is now judge, jury and executioner. On an ongoing case that has not been heard before the trial, they've made a conclusion. So I ask Kimberly Anderton, I asked Tina Stagliano, Fiona McClay, are you guys privy by any chance to the 100,000 documents plus before the court, and did you see the child disclosures? I don't know. You're pretty sure, like you're making a decision here on an ongoing case. Oh, we don't need their response. We don't need. We haven't been privy to any other evidence except just the complaint by the judge, and we're happy to rule on the case. Well, where did you get your legal training, guys? Victorian Legal Services Board, where did you get your training? You are privy to private submissions on an ongoing case before a judge who made a complaint against me in the Queensland jurisdiction, which was transferred from the Queensland Legal Services Commission to you. And now you go beyond what the judge is saying, beyond what the magistrate is saying, and you're actually ruling on this case without even the trial being heard. What can I say? What can I say? What can I honestly say? Than state-sanctioned violence. And you want to take away my livelihood because of this one case. And a poor little child needs to be saved. And a poor little grandma is being hurt. State-sanctioned violence by the CDPP. State-sanctioned violence by the Australian Federal Police. State-sanctioned violence by the Queensland Police. State-sanctioned violence by these issues being ignored by a Prime Minister and the Attorney General. State-sanctioned violence by the Victorian Legal Services Board and the Queensland Legal Services Commissioner for attacking the solicitor. The only voice that this woman has, a voice of truth and care, of dignity and integrity. And you want to use this case. And there's another case too, but I probably won't get into it because that would really make me cry. Where again I was targeted by family court judges and the legal establishment for me being personally attacked, taking away my license for speaking about the truth and wanting to help very vulnerable people in the community, Indigenous people, ethnic people, Australian women, to defend them when no one can defend them, taking on the toughest cases. And now the Victorian Legal Services Board wants to use these cases to then take down all my other cases when I've complied with everything. They want to know the names of all the national class action participants. Why? Why would I give you the names? What my barristers think. What kind of country do we live in? They want to know where I live, where my personal address is. And they get upset with me when I talk about blood on the streets or blood for peace, when it's them that are carrying the guns and pointing it at me and my clients. When it's me who's in the firing range. When it's my poor little clients and their poor little kids who are in the firing range. I said I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to make this video again. And they have the audacity to say that the money I raised on behalf of my clients, who not one person made a complaint, that they want to hijack my account. They want to put a manager that they want to hijack my cases. So they want to put someone from the government to fight the government. I'm crying not because I'm afraid. Crying because there's just so many corrupt people in this country. There's so many corrupt and soulless individuals in our bureaucracies that are creating so much pain and suffering. And as a society, we have to look for an answer beyond all of this pain and suffering, beyond the pain, and for the truth, to speak the truth, not to believe in the lies and the distortions. I'm not going to make this video again. I promised myself not to cry. But yeah, I did. I love my clients. I love being a lawyer. I love legal argument. There's a beautiful heritage in this country of common law, of God's laws, encoded in common law. We have beautiful heritage, both Christian and now a multitude of religions that have come across, a celebration of so much beauty. And we have healthy legislative writers in this country. I have high respect for them. We have some really good judges in this country. Federal court judges, Justice Greenwood, Justice Raries, great judges, wonderful judiciary judges that need to speak out. And we've got wonderful parliamentarians that need to speak out and speak up, because our country is being taken over by immorality. And this is immoral, what the Victorian Legal Services Board is doing. It's immoral to use the names of my clients without actually speaking to them. It's immoral to make them live in fear. Fear for their lives. Fear that the Australian Federal Police will come and arrest you, or jail you, or track you. Fear that someone will put a bullet to their heads. We have to stop this fear. This is not a way to live. This is not a way to be in the nation where we play by the rules. We have rules where you go to the court and you play your arguments. And I will stand up, and I will keep standing up for all the people. I will keep standing up for all my clients. You don't own me. You don't control me. And you most certainly don't own my clients.